Well, we are delighted to have you with us here on Curiosity, Not Judgment. This is kind of a reboot or a take two, if you will. My name is Birga,
And I'm Gary.
and I'm wondering, should we do a little bit of a reintroduction if we've got some new folks that join us after this time?
Please do.
Okay. Well, Gary and I started this podcast. I went and looked it up December 8th of 2021, and we had 150 episodes over a couple of years. And our last episode was January 22nd of 2025. And it's hard to believe how much time has elapsed, both from the start of the original podcast all the way through, the end of what we had imagined to be the completion of this project. But we have come to realize that this is a space that we function really well in. We're good at having conversation together. And our hope and our prayer is that we bring you along for the journey, asking some really curious questions about situations that we face that might also be something that would cause you to pause and reflect and approach things maybe differently in your own space. So, what would you add to that?
Well, I would just say that the curiosity journey has been an amazing one for me, and I think both of us together on this, and for those around both of us who know that we're doing this. And I think that the fact that we need to stay curious has not diminished. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I think it has increased vastly. We originally stopped doing this a little over a year ago because we were going to take a lot of this content and put it into a book. And what we figured out is we're much better at sitting down and chatting about curiosity than we are writing
Yeah.
a book. And I've never been one to have the patience to sit down at a keyboard. But hey, we have AI now, and we thought that that would really help. And it does. I mean, we did finally find something that will help us format our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very much into, and you've done some writing on the side.
Mm-hmm.
I've done some writing on the side. I'm doing a series of LinkedIn posts right now. AI can only be at this point. In the future, we'll have AGI and we'll have different things, and it'll be more generative. But right now, it's formulaic, right? And what really makes sense to the two of us is stories and real life. And AI doesn't know that yet. And so it really doesn't help. It helps in formatting, but then it tries to take over and put different words in our mouths. And so, anyway, we have not written the book. We think we've got a really good idea for how to format
Yeah.
same. And I think we're much closer now than when we started, but we still haven't done it. So when Birga said, why don't we just sit down and chat again? I thought that's a great idea because we're not making adequate progress on a book. Now, there's people out there who have written books and who know the process, and they're probably going, yeah, it's not so easy, is it? And for those people, my sister's one of them. For those people, that's right. It's not so easy, is it? But we thought we'd just sit down and chat again and see what happens.
Yeah. I think it's also maybe worth a few minutes of explanation about who we are in our professional space and maybe even how you and I came together to begin this conversation in the first place. Gary and I have known each other for probably 12 plus years at this point, and we have had different careers. We have also merged in a space and a time, gone back our separate ways. And so we have a few points of overlap, but mostly we've been in very different spheres. And I have been largely in the nonprofit sector for the last 10 plus years. And for the last several years, I have been really focusing my time and attention on the anti-human trafficking movement and work for an agency in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and do a lot of education statewide. We do end up talking a lot about AI in our respective jobs because it drastically impacts both of us. We can come back to that in a moment, but just wanted to set the stage a little bit for kind of where we come from in our perspective of professional lenses and just give the audience a little bit of a taste of that as well.
Right. So from the, I guess, not to label it, but because we do have so much overlap, and every time we talk, as Birga comes from the more of the human and nonprofit and, kind of out there in the world dealing with those kinds of things, I'm coming from the engineering side, from the more technical side. I've been doing microgrids and energy and now data center work. And so we do come from kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think it's a testament to the fact that we're both being curious that we do find so much overlap. And I think so many people run in their circles and develop their own language and their own way of thinking things, their own mental models, their own paradigms about the world, the way the world works. And what Virg and I find is there's a ton of overlap. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of transferable skills between things as disparate as a somebody who's doing data centers and somebody who is doing nonprofit world and working with humans every day. I think it's mainly because we both work with humans every day, right?
Yes, in very different capacities.
And that's the curious thing. Just recently, I was on a podcast and found myself saying that whenever humans are involved, even the physics, the engineering, the stuff that's supposed to have a formula to it, gets messy.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself saying that the two oldest institutions of humankind that you'd think we'd get right by now are religion and politics,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we can't talk about them at Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
And the reason is because humans are messy,
Mm-hmm.
and quite frankly, that's a feature, not a bug. If
Mm-hmm.
if it was formulaic, then we would have figured it out many years ago. Things would be very uninteresting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Many decades, many millennia ago. And so, what makes it so interesting and what makes curiosity, we think, so important is the fact that we as humans are messy, and we're very unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
We're each on our own journey. It's very difficult to say, oh, you've done this, this, and this, so therefore you're going to do this. We're not predictable.
Yeah.
We're nicely unpredictable, and that's again a feature, not a bug. And so I think that this is timely and really very much timely. In the other part of this that's really strikes me is the fact that in our country we are, everything's a sine wave. As a physicist, as an engineer, you would say that everything is a sine wave: economy, politics, etc. But we seem to be ringing. We seem to
Mm-hmm.
be out of control. We're not in a dampened state. We're in a wham, wham, wham state, which makes things even more unpredictable. And
Mm-hmm.
I think very much people feel untethered.
Yes, that's a good word.
And I think that that's even a better place to be curious from, because if you're not
Mm.
curious, if you're tethering to something that is totally opposite than somebody else is tethered to, how then do we get along?
Yeah. I met with a dear friend a few days ago, and he described what he was feeling in the world right now as the ship has gone down and everybody is hanging on to their own planks of wood in the water.
Hmm.
And your descriptor of being untethered, I think, fits in that mental picture. And the curiosity comes in, I suppose, is as we're floating along and you bump into somebody else hanging onto a plank, are you friend or foe?
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to together come up with a solution that would help both of us survive and then ultimately thrive? And I think that is where we find ourselves in this situation right now in the world, and lots of chaos, as you have alluded to, and lots of uncertainty. And with the introduction of tools on the AI spectrum and the maybe promise of order and regulation and ease of, I don't know, creating new things with the help of the artificial, I think that has further untethered people rather than made them feel secure and hopeful.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You would think that these tools would help people
Mm,
think more alike, and it seems like it's helping people think more differently.
yeah. I think I was not planning at all to go in down the AI bunny trail, and I know that we've done it several times in our past episodes, but it is so prevalent and it is so relevant right now. I can't help but bring it up, especially just in this context of us kind of reintroducing ourselves in our professional space. I spoke at a conference a few days ago, and the I was the last one in a lineup, and so there was several folks that had gone before me, and they were largely people from the prosecutorial sector or law enforcement dealing with internet crimes against children.
Mm.
And so much of their focus was on combating AI generated materials.
Mm.
It's called CSAM,
Mm.
childhood sexual exploitive materials.
Wow.
And so, or excuse me, sexual abuse material. And that world of deep fake and production of that type of content is something that now our law enforcement and our prosecution teams are having to figure out how to deal with it,
Mm.
because we don't have good laws on the books, right, for something that didn't even exist
That's right.
a few years ago. So they're having conversations in these other sessions about the evils of AI and what it's doing with the promotion and duplication and far-reaching impact of child sexual abuse materials. And then me and my follow-up, what I had already had planned was to talk about AI as a positive tool in the
Mm-hmm.
fight against
Mm-hmm.
human trafficking. So there is a platform that has utilized AI very heavily and fed it all of the indicators around human trafficking, so that if somebody were to open up this tool and begin to ask questions because they see something of concern and they want to engage in an appropriate manner, because of the information this has been fed, it will take you down a series of questions to make a determination. Is the scene that you are observing something that qualifies as a human trafficking
Mm.
case
Mm.
that needs to be then reported to law enforcement? Or is it something different where you need to seek assistance elsewhere? And so I was highlighting that as a very positive tool. And so curiosity has to come in, not just declare it good or bad, but to say, how are we utilizing this thing? And what do we need to be prepared for? Because it is a very real part of our lives.
Oh, wow, that's a whole lot of stuff there.
Sorry, I
No, no,
dropped it
no.
on you.
It's really good though, because I've been in these debates a lot lately. I like to be an early adopter. I like to try to, stay relevant. And so, of course, I've got my my Mac Mini running OpenClaw as an agent on my in my office in the back there. And as I've been playing with this tool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is very interesting because people will say, "Well, it's going to be the demise of humanity. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be there's all these evil ways to use it," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, but I'm not using it that way, so that's not even part of my world. I hadn't even heard of what you were just talking about a minute ago, and that's bad. I guess thinking backwards over time, as those of us who are a little bit older tend to do, I think back of how people thought that the internet was going to be
Mm-hmm.
all evil, how social media is, some people still say, is all evil. We just got a ban of anybody under 16 using it in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to be interesting. Before that, it was, television, right? And Marshall McLuhan and his hot media of how television was going to rot all of our brains and be a very bad thing. And then before that, it was the printing press. The Gutenberg printing press was going
Mm-hmm.
to be a bad tool and could be used for bad things. And of course, it is my belief that you can use any tool for good or bad.
Yeah.
I think my curious question is, do we think we can put this genie back in the bottle?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, my impression, my thinking in these 5 seconds is the answer to that is no. So I guess I spend my time being more curious about, okay, then how can we use it for good, and how can we prevent it from being used for evil? And that is, I guess, the not only the curious question, but it's funny that you were at a conference that showed on one stage
Mm-hmm.
both the evil and the good of this tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that that really key question that you just posed of, any tool can be used for good or evil. How am I going to utilize it?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to respond? And I think that is the very personal question that we all get to ask, right? That's where everyone listening or watching gets to have that consideration for themselves. And maybe you're at a workplace where AI is maybe being more forced upon you than you want it to be. How do you utilize it for good and not bad? right? Maybe you're in a place, you're like Gary, you were an early adopter, you're all in AI for everything. And maybe there's some guardrails that you need to be more careful with,
Hmm. Hmm.
because maybe it's approaching a place of being exploitative or mimicking something that you're presenting as your own and it's not. You know, how do we stay ethical? How do we stay true to ourselves? How do we stay true to our values when we have a tool such as AI creeping into such a huge number of areas that we touch every single day?
Exactly. Yeah. And I do want to stay cognizant of the very fact that the things that I'm doing could drift towards a misuse of
Mm,
AI. I think that's a great reminder, and it's something I'm really thinking hard about as you're speaking. Now, I'm one of those who understands that well, let me just say my own experience only because that's all I know. Um, Whenever I'm using ChatGPT or Claude, and I use different things for different things, and then sometimes will use even a different platform
mm-hmm,
to critique something that I've done in another, or make sure it's real and nobody's hallucinated, right? Whenever I go to use a tool, and not everybody knows this, but anybody who's used it, I hope, does and utilizes this tool, is there's a set of instructions that you give it
mm-hmm,
right up front. And I call it my Gary brain. And I say exactly who I am, what my values are, and what I'm expecting as answers.
mm-hmm,
And I also tell it to not just be my friend and just go down some merry path that I'm going,
right.
but to be critical and say, wait a minute, is that true? And is that true to your values? And is
Yeah.
that even true with respect to precedent and other things that I'm researching? And so I try to give it a set of
Mm-hmm,
instructions that make sure that it's not going to give me stuff that's going to be down a primrose path.
right.
What I don't want is a tool that just agrees with me and
Mm-hmm,
makes my points, or finds just the data. I was trained in the art of science. I'll never forget back in high school in AP physics. The scientific method is that you put out a hypothesis, and what you want is to prove your hypothesis wrong. And that's, again, back to features and bugs. That's a feature. That
mm-hmm,
means it's working if it comes back and proves you
mm-hmm,
wrong. So many people, I think, nowadays are just using any tool, whether it's AI, Google search, the internet, books, or their friends that they keep, just to add to or verify or validate, is a better word, what I'm currently
mm-hmm,
thinking, even if it's wrong.
mm-hmm,
So to me, staying curious is not hearing only what I want to hear.
mm-hmm,
And so I make sure that I'm programming any tool that I'm using, including now AI, to not agree with me,
mm-hmm.
but to say, always challenging anything. If I come to a conclusion, all data centers should be hooked to the grid. I don't want to hear things about, oh yeah, Gary, that's a great thought. You're
You're a
brilliant.
genius.
You're a genius, which they'll do.
Yeah, I know.
They're programmed to do it
I
because
know.
they want you to spend more tokens. I say, no, no, no. Anytime I start saying, matter of fact, it's my best sounding board.
Mm,
I'll purposely put in things like that and hear, oh, have you heard of, negative impedance? And have you heard about, anyway. So I think that there are, again, back to the curiosity is, how can I use this tool
mm,
like I intend to use all my other tools? Hopefully I do, in the right way to get me to answers that are helpful to the most amount of people
mm.
and add value to the world.
And staying true to your personal values and
And
convictions along the
that's
way.
right, that's right. And or if I have a conviction or a personal value, so we're not going to solve what is truth today.
Right.
However, if I've got a mental model or a paradigm that is missing
Mm-hmm,
or needs to be changed, that I challenge that also, that I
mm-hmm,
don't get stuck.
mm. Well, I think maybe let's bring it back around to the book writing, because I think all of this is kind of a fascinating arc to this story that we're beginning to share again. And I think Gary and I both had really high hopes that AI was going to be really instrumental in getting this project done. And I think, in this 5-second moment, that I'm actually pleased that we don't have an end product right now, because it likely would have been more AI generated than we wanted it to be.
Mhm.
I think we would not have had all of ourselves in the content the way that we wanted to. And I think it could not capture the robust nature of what it is to converse with another human being. A book is a great thing and it's a great tool to learn from, but it also is a singular voice that is interpreted by the reader in their own tone, in their own head.
Mhm.
And so the advantage to you and I sitting back down and having this conversation is you are hearing our tones, you're hearing our responses to one another, and we don't go back and edit out things that we maybe stumbled over. We This is just a live conversation to process life together. And so maybe in the grand scheme of things, I'm glad that the book hasn't worked out just yet.
Well, I'm glad, because if I wasn't glad, then I'd have to say, well, it's my fault, right? And so we don't like to blame ourselves for things. So, no, I'm remembering the frame of a cartoon that says, "Do you believe in determination?" And it's, one guy sitting to another, and they're sitting in the gutter, right? And the other guy says, "Well, yeah, I do. Otherwise, I have to blame only myself for
Mm,
where I'm at," right? So, I do believe that things happen for a reason.
mm,
And I do believe that the book was not meant to have been written by now, otherwise, it would have been.
sure.
And so, and I think that our experiences along the way, at some point, I do believe that we will sit down
Hmm.
and write a book in a moment of time, and and then we'll have further thoughts afterwards,
For
and,
sure.
maybe other things down the road. But the main thing is, the reality is, it's not done. The
Sure.
data is, it's not done. And I think we'll continue to learn. And I think this has been very helpful in setting the perspective of what we would do going forward.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up with that. And our expectation is to continue to record some podcasts, to continue to have good conversation, to invite you into the conversation. As always, if you've got something on your mind, please drop something in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if there's a particular topic maybe you're struggling through and would want or welcome us to have some curiosity about it, suggest some of those topics. We'd love to hear from you. So we'll bid you adieu for now and see you next time.
Be well.